This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Oil prices edged up on Monday as traders watched for supply disruption risks in the Middle East following strikes by U.S. and British forces to stop Houthi militia in Yemen from attacking ships in the Red Sea. Brent crude futures were up 13 cents, or 0.2%, to $78.42 a barrel by 04:05 GMT after settling 1.1% higher on Friday. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $72.73 a barrel, up 5 cents, or 0.1%, following a near 1% gain in the previous session. The benchmarks jumped more than 2% last week to touch their highest intraday levels this year after U.S. and British forces launched dozens of airstrikes against Houthi forces in retaliation for months of attacks on Red Sea shipping that the Iran-backed fighters cast as a response to war in Gaza.
U.S. natural gas output fell to a preliminary 11-month low on Sunday as frigid weather froze wells across the country, while gas demand for heating and power generation was on track to hit record highs. In Texas, the state's power grid operator, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT, forecast electric demand on Tuesday would top last summer's all-time high and warned power supplies could fall short on both Monday and Tuesday. ERCOT on Sunday issued an appeal to the public calling for energy conservation from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Central Time, 1200 to 1600 GMT, on Monday.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Global consumption of petroleum and other liquids hit a record high last year and is forecast to increase further in both 2024 and 2025, but that does not necessarily mean prices must rise to ensure demand is met. Worldwide consumption averaged 101.1 million barrels per day, (BD), in 2023, narrowly beating the pre-pandemic record of 101.0 million BD in 2019, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, AIA. Consumption is forecast to rise to an average of 102.5 million BD in 2024 and 103.7 million BD in 2025, the agency said, giving its first forecast for next year. Short-Term Energy Outlook, AIA, January 9, 2024.
S.Korea imports no Iran crude oil for December and a year ago, preliminary data from Korea Customs Service showed on Monday. The world's fifth-largest crude buyer imported a total 12 million tons of crude last month against 12 million tons imported a year ago, the data also showed. Final data for South Korea's crude oil imports last month will be published by state-run Korea National Oil Corp. (KNOC) later the month. The KNOC data is considered the industry standard for South Korea's oil imports. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. China likely produced around 1.02 billion metric tons of crude steel last year, a state-backed steel association said late Friday. The world's largest steel producer manufactured approximately 1.018 billion tons of crude steel in 2022. The country's crude steel output stood at 952.14 million tons in the first 11 months of 2023, a 1.5% gain from a year earlier, official data showed. The country's Statistics Bureau is due to release the annual output data for industrial metals this Wednesday.
Iron ore futures moved sideways on Monday with the Dalian benchmark extending falls for a second session, after authorities in top consumer China disappointed the market by not cutting medium-term policy rate as expected. The most traded May iron ore contract on China's Dalian Commodity Exchange, DCE, dropped 1.4% to 950 yuan, $132.51, a metric ton, as of 0238 GMT. China's central bank left the medium-term policy rate unchanged on Monday, defying market expectations as signs of a weaker currency continue to limit the scope of monetary easing.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
India does not plan to import wheat and its farmers are likely to harvest a bumper crop that will boost stockpiles in the world's second biggest producer of the staple, the trade minister said on Saturday. Ground reports indicate that the crop is quite good and this year's production is expected at a record 114 million metric tons, Piyush Goyal told reporters. India banned wheat exports in 2022 after output was curtailed due to a heat wave, but more recently overseas sales picked up as Russia's invasion of Ukraine sent global prices to multi-year highs. That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.